Good afternoon. Welcome to Douglas County Digest. We're here with Mark Maxey, and he has recently cut an album. And so we'd like to learn the process of a local boy that does good. Mark, tell us a little bit about your journey into music prior to this recording contract. How did you get started in music?
Well, I'd say my musical career started at a very young age. I was always interested in music. I can remember when I was 5 years old and my dad brought me this first old-fashioned radio that used to set up on the headboard of my bed, and I would listen to WLS on AM radio back in the day, because there wasn't any FM back in the day, and sit there and listen to all the oldies that would be played. Back then, you know, they were hits, but at nighttime there would be a different venue played rather than the top 40. Nighttime they'd play the older classic rock that would be classified as classic rock today. That got me interested, listening to that radio every night before I went to bed. And
okay,
that's the fire pager, folks. Anyway.
Okay, wait, let's start. Okay, I'm going to let you go again. I'll do 3, 2, 1. Okay, go ahead. Finish.
So anyway, I got into music by listening to it at an early age. I was always interested in harmonic stuff. I can remember watching the Beatles on Ed Sullivan with my mom in the living room while my sisters were playing, dolls. So I was always interested in music from an early age. Like I said, I loved the stuff that had harmonies in it. Beach Boys, Simon and Garfunkel, the Beatles. Anything where people were singing harmonies always seemed to get my ear. So I loved that type of music. Then when I lived out in Omaha, Nebraska for a few years when I was a younger kid, and the very first thing I wanted was a drum. I wanted to learn how to play drums, and that was my first musical instrument. My parents bought me an old Slingerland snare drum, and learned how to play the drum, and played in the high school band, and the grade school band, high school band, all that stuff. And then in 1970, my dad bought me my first 1970 Suzuki guitar, and I still have it to this day. I keep it in my office, and I write a lot of music. I've written a lot of music on that guitar, and have played that guitar since 1970. And from that point on, it was just kind of pick up different instruments and try to figure them out. I don't read music. I play by ear. So just picking up an instrument and fiddling around with it and messing around with it, I've learned how to plunk around on the piano a little bit. I can play a little bit on the mandolin. I can play a little bit of harmonica. I can play bass guitar, play rhythm guitar. I know just basic blues scales. I'm not a real accomplished lead guitarist by any means or anything like that, but I can play some scales and jam with people, and so that's pretty much how I got going into music and work.
So what is your genre of music, and how do you get inspired to write a song?
My genre of music that I play, my own self-titled genre, is I call myself a contemporary Christian folk rock sound. It's contemporary Christian. It's in lyrical and rhythmatically and that type of thing. But it's a kind of a combination between a little bit of a country sound with a little bit of a rock and roll sound, which is where the folk rock comes in, which comes from a lot of the people that influenced me. I spoke of them earlier, but some of the other ones was Bob Dylan. I listened to a lot of Bob Dylan growing up. Neil Young, listened to a lot of Neil Young stuff growing up, and I loved that acoustic sound mixed with the electric a little bit. And lo and behold, when I write music today, that's pretty much how it comes out. When you talk about inspired, what inspires me, I was in a band right out of high school with the Cooper brothers here in town. We were called Hammer, and we did a lot of cover tunes. A lot of the Rolling Stones and the Aerosmith and the Cheap Trick and the Blue Oyster Cult. Did all that kind of stuff and played the bar circuit around Central Illinois, and we used to sit down, me and Darren, and try to write music rock and roll music. Now Darren's went on to be able to do that himself, but I was never ever really had anything that inspired me to the point where I actually really came up with some lyrical content that really moved me until 1991 when I returned to my faith. I accepted Jesus as my Lord at the age of 13, and then walked away from that. Did the old prodigal son deal and turned around and walked away from it and went and lived a pretty crazy life until about 1991, which would have put me at the age of 31. I started coming around and realizing that I wanted to return to my faith and see what the Lord could do in a pretty torn up life at that time that I was experiencing myself personally. And what happened is that I got involved in a praise band that was playing at a kind of a charismatic church that I was attending at the time. And I never ever even knew that there was such things as praise bands. I thought you'd go to church and you'd listen to the piano player on the piano, and that would be about it. That would be about as rocking and rolling as it got. And I walk into this place and they actually have a bass guitar and a lead guitar and a rhythm guitar and a piano player and backup singers and somebody playing fiddle. And I was like, wow, man, this is pretty cool. And one of the people that was in that praise band was Brian Henningsen of the Henningsens. And Brian was actually one of the early guys that kind of turned me on to contemporary Christian music. I really never really even knew that there was even a radio station out there that played this type of genre of music. So I got turned on to that type of music and immediately was able to have something to say. I got my guitar out from underneath my bed that had been there for a long time. These people in that praise band realized who I was. They knew who I was. They knew I'd sang in a band before. I played a little guitar. They asked me to be in the praise band. As soon as I got my feet wet and got my chops back of playing rhythm guitar, I was constantly coming home and working out chord progressions and stuff, and the words just started coming out of me. And because I finally had something to say, and what I had to say was to speak about my faith. And that's what I did. I started allowing God to use me to speak about what I know to be true through my faith in Jesus. And lo and behold, I believe that because I was so open to that, I think God was able to use me until I got to the point where I was allowing Him to use me. I was unable to really do that. But once I got to that point, then the words started coming, and all the chord progressions that I'd worked on all those years and had these little riffs in my head, and all this stuff started to make sense, and I'd retained all that musical stuff, But now all of a sudden I had something to say. I got a saying on my Facebook page. That one of my quotes is, if you haven't got something to say, and you're not passionate about saying it, put your guitar back in your case. And that's kind of the way I felt about my music. And now all of a sudden I started writing, and I wrote, and next thing I know, I've got 3 or 4 songs, and the next thing you know, I've got 10 or 15. Then a couple years later, my catalog increased to about 25 or 30. Now it's almost up to 50 songs. Complete, arranged, ready to record, put on an album songs that I'm very confident with, that I think have good hooks to them, good jingles to them, that I really believe people would like. And the inspiration definitely comes from God's Spirit, touching my heart, giving me something to say, giving me something to speak about that's real and true.
So how did you decide to make a recording, to take that next step?
Well, 2 of the people I've already mentioned. I watched over the years. I watched my buddy Darren go out on his own and create some independent albums. They call them indie albums, and he's done 3, and I think he's even working on a 4th as we speak. I've been watching him do that, going out and doing something with his talent and making his music. I watched a couple buddies of mine from Atwood got together with some old college buddies, and they just recently did an album themselves. Then I watched Brian Henningsen move off to Nashville and get hooked up with his kids, with some writers and some people down there, and they're doing really well. And that inspired me. That was like, I need to see if what I've got and what I've been doing all these years is something that maybe the Lord wants to take it to another level. And so one day I decided, I'm going to research some Christian labels and see what's out there. And of course, some of the bigger labels, it's a pretty tough world out there in the music business. But I found a few in Nashville, and I found one in Oklahoma City that I felt comfortable that might be a beginning step. And so I had done a benefit for a friend of mine who died of cancer here just not too long ago, Kevin Wiggle. We did a hee-haw benefit for him at the Christian church. And somebody had videotaped my band's performance. We did 3 songs at the beginning of the hee-haw special and 3 songs at the end. And one of those clips I got hold of, and I thought, I'm going to use that as a submission. What you do is when you contact labels like this, the first thing they want you to do is to submit something to them so they can check it out to see if it's worth a hoot or not, Decided to use that video clip and send it off. The first guy from Nashville gets a hold of me. The very first thing he wants me to do is move to Nashville. And they talked about, some of you're just talking over the phone a little bit about, different things. And one of the things they were going to want to do was if they signed me, was they were going to pretty much own my music. And that just wasn't what I was looking for. I was just wanting to go somewhere to make a record, And so I basically told the guy, well, if it can't happen from 200 East NZ Street in Tuscola, it's not going to happen. I'm sorry, but it's just not what I'm looking for. The guy still emails me to this day, wanting to know if I would be interested. But the other person, a couple months went by before he actually called me. So I was even to the point where I was thinking, oh well, it must not sound that good. And so another month goes by and nobody else calls, and then all of a sudden me and my wife are heading up Champaign to eat, and the phone rings on my truck. And I answer the phone, and it's Tate Music out of Mustang, Oklahoma, which is just a little town, a little south outside of Oklahoma City. Actually, it's about 5 miles away from Moore, Oklahoma, where the tornado tore up that town down there. Mustang is not 5 minutes away from there. And they called me up and said they loved the submission, and they wanted to sign me to a record deal immediately, and get to work on it. And so that's pretty much how it all transpired. And actually, when I was researching them, Tate Music had this mission statement that I had read that I really liked. It really touched my heart, and it was a mission statement that resonated with my belief system and what I believed. And I just really felt like this would be cool to go down and record with these people. And lo and behold, that's who it ended up being with, So that was kind of a cool deal. So then, what the next step after that was is I had to come up with 8 songs. The song that they liked on the videotape was a song called "Real to Me," so I made sure that one was on the first album. And it's always been a kind of a staple of the arrangement of songs that I do when I do gigs out and about in the areas. I've always done "Real to Me." It's always been well received by people, so I thought it was and it's one of my older songs, So but because it was the song that they had a hook in it that they really liked, I made sure that it was on the album. Actually, the first song on the album, and so I had to come up with 8 songs. I came up with 8 songs. I needed to produce a demo, a CD demo with the 8 songs. As close to timing wise and everything that I could possibly get with just my vocal and guitar. Very basic. I did have a couple of my bandmates that jam with me here in town actually played on a couple of them just to kind of give it a little bit more feel so that they could really understand what I was trying to accomplish. and I come up with that 8-song CD, and I send it off to them to let them determine yes on this song, yes on this song, no on that song, yes on. Well, they liked all my songs, and so that's a good thing. So they accepted all my 8 songs that I submitted to them on my demo. And then what I do also is for each song on my demo, I do what I termed as a recipe sheet for each song. I would go in and I would say, on this song I want electric guitar, piano, bass, drums. I want a mandolin in this particular portion of the song. I want a fiddle coming in on this particular portion. Right here's where I want it all to come in together and crescendo up or decrescendo down. And you just basically do a recipe sheet for each song. And so then I record all my songs on the CD demo, and I did all this in my basement in my studio downstairs. And then I do the recipe sheet. And then what happens is the producer who you get assigned to you at Tate, when your project gets assigned to a producer from the executive producer, they will take that recipe sheet, listen to your demo tape, and they will now understand more fully what you're trying to accomplish and what you're wanting to have your song sound like. And this, by the way, happens if you're wanting to use their musicians to do your album. It was going to be very difficult for me to rehearse the songs, to get everything down, exactly timed out with any of the musicians around here that I played with. So I thought for this first project I would use the studio's musicians and just go from there and see how it sounded. And if I didn't like the way it turned out, I wouldn't do it ever again. You know, I would try something new. Turns out that when they took my CD and they sent it in to the executive producer down there, whose name is Don Johnson, and he's won a Grammy Award with working with people like Linda Ronstadt, Emmylou Harris, Crystal Gale, Lee Greenwood, Roy Clark. You know, and some of those names are kind of right there in that folk rock genre, you know, that was right with me. And I was like, all right, this guy probably could really dial in get me hooked up with one of his associate producers and really get me hooked up with the sound that I'm wanting to achieve. Well, come to find out while I was down there that Tate Music takes in about 1,000 submissions a month, and 3 to 4 get chosen. So I made that cut. Then out of those 3 to 4, they all go to Don Johnson, and then he assigns them to associate producers. Out of those 3 or 4 a month, which is about around 36 artists a year, they take in. Don might involve himself. He oversees all the projects, but he directly will produce maybe 1 or 2 artists a year, and he chose me to produce himself. So that was another miles or a hurdle that another cut that I made, which was really honoring and humbling. That guy with that kind of caliber wanted to produce me himself, and so Don took this stuff and worked on it, and several months went by, and then they scheduled me into the studio in the middle of March of this year, 2013, is when I was down there in Oklahoma. And Don did an awesome job of interpreting exactly what I wanted my music to sound like. And lo and behold, about 2 weeks before I was scheduled to go down there, I hadn't got my rough tracks, what we call rough tracks, back to listen to what the musicians are doing and what Don has put together. And I was talking to my sound engineer, Jeff Lee, on the phone one day, and I said, I haven't heard from Don. I'm kind of freaking out. I'm like, has he assigned me, at this particular point, I didn't know Don was doing my project either. I said, has he even assigned me to who's going to be my producer? Who's going to be in the band? Who's going to be the musicians that I'm going to be playing with? I was all freaked out, And Jeff goes, man, you need to settle down, dude. He goes, Don Johnson's doing your project himself. And I was like, oh, really? He goes, yeah, and he's a musical genius, man. This is the guy you want doing your project. And I was going, oh, all right, that's cool. I said, well, who are the musicians that he's going to have playing on my album? He goes, they've been flying in from all over everywhere all week long. I said, really? Who are these people? He goes, most of them are out of Reba McEntire's band. And so that was pretty humbling to know that that kind of caliber of musicians were playing on my project, you know. And so turns out I go down there in March, and they rolled out the red carpet for me. It was just an awesome experience. My wife couldn't make it, Pam couldn't make it down there with me, so my mom ended up going with me with her iPad and her iPhone and all this stuff, and she recorded got a lot of pictures and got to experience it with me. So it was a pretty cool experience. And you know, it was neat to get down there and do that and have them say things like, you know, we're really impressed with how well you know your music. Now, of course, you know, you think, well, I wrote it, but not only did I write it, but I practice it all the time, you know. I was just like, oh yeah. trying to be cool about it and everything. And then they were also impressed with how high I could sing for an old guy. 52, 53 years old, going to be 53 in September, and they were impressed with how I could hit my high notes. So I thought that was kind of cool too. So anyway.
So tell us a little bit about a typical, if there is such a thing, a typical recording session for you. What did that entail? I know you didn't do everything together all at once and then you just walk away. There's a certain procedure you have to follow.
Yeah, what transpires is before I even get there, the musicians are gathered together under the direction of Don Johnson, who actually played the keyboard on my album too. Besides produced my project, he also played the keyboard on it. He brings in these different musicians. They take my demo, and they'll all listen to it. They call them the cans, well, similar to what you got on your head right now. They'll put on the earphone, you know, the headsets, and they'll all be listening to my demo, and they'll be playing to a clicker that'll set the time so that they all are on the same page, you know. And they will then play the basic music tracks for my album. And so by the time I get down there, I'm laying down my guitar, my rhythm guitar, on top of what they've already produced, and you know, what they've recorded, and then I lay down my vocals, and then I lay down any background vocals that the vocaling that I want to do on my own on the project. And then Don brought in 3 backup singers that also sang backup on some of the songs on my album. So when I got down there, it was just basically the very first day, lay down guitar tracks, and just went right through them. And then on that day, the next day was supposed to be for my vocaling, for my vocal tracks. We started on my vocal. We got my guitar done and went right to vocals on the first day, and I basically had such a good day in the studio that day. I got about everything, all my vocals done except for 2 songs. I had 2 songs to do on the second day, and I was scheduled in there for 3 or 4 days. And by the third day, I was done. All I had to do was do my photo shoot and come home. And so I knocked it out of the park, you know, as they would say. And my producer was very happy with my way I performed, you know, what I was able to do in the studio. And so it was a cool experience. And while I was in there, you know, of course they were actually producing and recording some other acts also, some other artists that were in there in the studio at the same time. And so I got to meet a couple of the other tape music artists while I was there, and very cool experience. Yeah.
So what now has to go on for the album to be released?
Well, after the recording was done, then what they do is they have to. It goes through a mixing and a mastering phase. And then they mix and master it, and then they send it back to me. And all this is done on MP3 file, and they send it back to me, and I listen to it. I'll listen to it through my PA. I'll listen to it through car stereos, home stereos, different PA systems, and make sure it sounds the way I want it. You know, the equalization is good to my ear. Everything sounds the way I want it. Of course, when you got a Grammy award-winning producer, there's not much tweaking you have to do. But then I send it back with any tweaks that I would have, and then they run it through another mastering phase, and then after that, they send it back to me, and while they're doing that, they also kick it to the artwork people, and then the artwork people take the photo shoot material that was done while I was down there. By the way, this photographer was from New York City, and he took me out in the middle of a cattle ranch in the middle of Oklahoma. I could see how come tornadoes are so prominent, because it was just flat open, plenty of room for storm cell systems to get generated out there, you know. But took me out to this old cattle ranch and put me on a dirt road, and because the title of the project is Damascus Road Experience. And I was asking him to find me a dirt road or some secluded road. He goes, "I got the perfect place." And so we went out, and that's where the photo shoot was taken. But they take all that material and they send it to the artwork folks, and then they take all of you know what I've also have done a recipe sheet for what I want my album to express. For example, one of the things I told him, I didn't want crystal pristine clear pictures. I wanted them to kind of antique them and make them look old and westerny, you know, kind of like some of the old folk albums that I've got in my mind that Dylan did and Neil Young, some of them, you know. And so they take all those ideas of mine and what I'm kind of looking for, and then they do kind of like what Don did with my music. They take that and they interpret it and they create a product with it. And then they send that to me on file for me to view. And each time, you know, whether I was receiving music from them or the artwork from them, when me and Pam opened this stuff up and looked at it, it brought tears to our eyes. We just couldn't believe it was, you know, coming to fruition. My dream of having an album was finally coming to fruition. And it was just, and they just did such a marvelous job. And I have the album back there behind me, you know, on the piano, which you'll look at a little bit later. But they did an awesome job on it. Very, very, very professional people down there. So
Sounds like a wonderful experience.
yeah, it was.
So when is this going to be released? How do we hear the songs?
Right now, it is in the finishing stages of the artwork. Any time it should go to production, and after it comes out of artwork, it goes straight into production, and then the marketing people get a hold of it also. I have a marketing team that will actually work on my project. They will look at it, they'll listen to it, and they'll say, okay, after we've listened to it, we've ran it through our panel of people, here's where we think we need to market this. You know, whether it's in the country gospel scene, or whether it's in the contemporary Christian markets, or wherever they decide, they'll decide that. And then it'll be available on iTunes, it'll be available on Amazon.com, it'll be available on Tape Music's website. They sell all their artists' work on the website itself. There's a store, you know, on there that you can go buy. I will have some personally with me when I do shows and gigs around the area. I will have some with me that I can sell and sign for fans and people that want to get one direct from the artist themselves. And then they you know, it depends on the market and how well it's received and stuff. You know, you could possibly see it in Target and Marketplace, Target and Walmart stores. So that would be very cool.
And when is this expected then to be released?
Right now, like I said, right now it's in the back end of the artwork stage. It goes to production and the target date was July. I was hoping the 1st of July it would be out. I don't know right at this point. It's the 21st, you know, and I'm kind of getting anxious and wondering, you know, I've got the finished product here behind me that they also send me when they get that done. So but this one here behind me, actually they send it to you so you can say, okay, is this exactly how you want it laid out? Do you see any typos and all this stuff? And we actually found some typos, in it, where they spelt Damascus, Damascus in one time in the lyrics. They had the letters transposed. So, as much as people look at it all the time, you would think, oh, they should be able to see that. No, you'll still find some things. And so we found some things that they had to tweak, that they had to edit out and change. And it's coming at the end of that. So July, I'm looking for July. I was hoping the 1st of July. I don't know if it's going to make it the 1st of July, but I got some places I'm going to be playing later on in July. I'll be playing Uptown Market here in Tuscola. I'm doing a Broadlands Emmanuel Lutheran Church, their big shindig that they do over there in Broadlands, which I was hoping to have the album by those dates so that I can sell some and sign some and start getting them out there. So hopefully July is my answer. You just don't know. You just got to get all this, all these phases done. So kind of at the label's mercy. Okay, this is a portion of the song that I got discovered by that they liked. So this is called "Real to Me." My Father lives in heaven. Jesus sits at his right hand, and I am waiting for him to take me, just as I am, just as I am. What I know and what I feel, it's real to me. What I know, what I feel, it's real to me. That's how it goes.